4.
Episode 4, yes, that's right.
And the first episode of 2019. Now, I'm here with my co-host Sam and the lovely Marc Thompson. If you recognise the name, you recognise the face. That is because Marc was my hero and fabulous in episode 2. And that is because of all the amazing work that he does around HIV prevention and the fact that he's a leading light in the black LGBT community. He does a lot of work, he supports a lot of young LGBT people. And not just that, he does like in the wider black community, because I think we kind of met online when we were arguing about a restaurant.
That's right, yeah.
And, me and Marc both got kicked off the page for arguing. So we're here at the Terrence Higgins Trust, and I want to speak to Marc about his latest project.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into that.
So, as you said, I'm Marc Thompson. I'm the strategic lead for health improvement here at the Terrence Higgins Trust, and I've worked in and around sexual health for about 25 years, particularly I work generic sexual health, so looking at HIV prevention and improving the good sexual health of anybody. But my particular interest has been around black, African and Caribbean communities, because I feel that we have really high rates of poor STIs and high rates of HIV. So I've always been really keen to try to make sure that our voices are heard, campaigns are representative, and they're targeted specifically at us.
Now, you just mentioned campaigns targeted specifically at us. The reason I wanted to chat to Marc today is because recently they've had a campaign that targets black people, black African people, and it's caused a bit of upset online, let's say the least. This is my personal opinion of it, is because a lot of people don't follow HIV prevention, they don't get into the world of, you know, sort of what's going on with STIs and all of that stuff. There's so much stigma attached to it. So, whereas, this is my belief, someone like you knows where the gaps are and that's pretty much what's happened. So, what do you say to the people who are criticising the current campaign for using black models?
Can I just say, I haven't seen the campaign. Would you mind just explaining what the campaign is and then?
I mean, absolutely. So the Twitter furore kind of kicked off just over the Christmas break, didn't it? And you sit down trying to chill and switch off from work, and all of a sudden you're kind of bashing out some responses. The campaign is part of a wider piece of work. It's part of our national programme, and it's called Give HIV the Finger.
Did you see Joe? He actually thinks he owns the place.
He can have it.
So, do you really think you're going to leave?
You know it. This isn't for me. Take the money and run.
Well, at least wait until my maternity leave.
What?
Yeah, I want at least 8 kids. But seriously, will that mean an end to this?
What do you mean?
Don't try it. This is like our 8th date in 4 weeks.
Date? I thought this was the Game of Thrones appreciation group.
Right.
What are you doing?
I can't do this anymore, Josh.
Doing what, Simone?
I know it's the 21st century, but does a girl have to beg?
Sit down, Simone.
I like you. And I know you like me.
Of course I do.
Then what's wrong? The night can't keep ending with you walking me home, a kiss on the cheek, and then you making an excuse to leave.
I don't make excuses. And we both know it's more than a kiss on the cheek.
We both have needs. And I believe in waiting until it feels right, and I think this feels right. I'm ready to take it past second base. Are you? Nice.
Of course I am.
Well, then let's go back to yours.
I want to.
Tonight?
Okay. I just need to...
No excuses. I'm going to go to the ladies, and when I come out, we'll get a taxi.
Hello? Yeah. Yeah, it's going great. She wants to come back to mine. Yeah, I want her to. I don't know if I'm ready, or if she is. I'm sick of having to go through this every time I like a girl. When is the right time to tell someone you're HIV positive?
There were two complaints, or two areas that people were picking holes in. One was the campaign itself, and the second was a survey. So let's look at the campaign first. So it's called Give HIV the Finger, and the imagery that we've used is part of a broad suite. So we're not just targeting Black African people, we're targeting a whole range of communities. So if you see the whole suite of the campaign, you'll see Black African people, white gay men, trans women, young Asian men, so all of our communities that should be going out and getting tested. And that's what the campaign's about. It's about raising awareness around HIV prevalence and the importance of getting tested and how easy it is to get a HIV test. And you can get a HIV test most places, you can order them online, you get results in 15, 20 minutes. So it's a really good thing. The reason that we've targeted or we've pulled out Black African people, we featured them in the campaign, is because we, Black African communities, are the second largest group affected by HIV in this country. Late diagnosis of HIV, which is a huge problem. If somebody's late diagnosed with HIV, it means that they can get ill, they might die, and it means they can still be passing the virus on. It's something which impacts our community.
Well, that's quite interesting. Can I just stop you
there?
there?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't know that. I thought, and probably like a lot of other people thought, once they get it, you can get medication. So you're saying it's easier the earlier they get it.
Yeah. The earlier you are diagnosed, the better for absolutely everybody. For you as an individual, right? Because then the virus doesn't take hold, it doesn't do damage to your body, and all the rest of it. And anybody who's long-term diagnosed with HIV can recuperate, and that's fine. But the key thing we want to do nowadays is get people who are tested onto treatment as quickly as possible to look after their own health. And also, once you get onto treatment, you can get the virus to such low levels in your body that you can't pass it on. Yeah. And this is how we end HIV in this country. So, as Black African communities in this country, we have really, really high rates of late diagnosis. And it has a lot to do with stigma, the fact that we don't think it affects us because we don't have these conversations, we don't know to where to get tested. Yeah. So that's why we really want to say to Black African communities, this is an issue, you can't run away from it.
Yeah. Can I ask, is that like first generation, second generation, where are you finding the rates higher?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen a shift over the years, and what's really good is that in the past year, we've seen HIV diagnosis drop in all groups, gay men and Black African communities. It's really going down. Originally, it had a lot to do with migration. So there were many people who were coming here in the past 20 years from the African continent who'd been infected abroad, okay? And that's not a bad thing, that's not to lay blame, it was just a fact, because the epidemic in Africa is a fact. Nobody can escape that.
Can I ask you, because I actually used to live in Uganda and work there, and there was something that was really quite outrageous or controversial called the PEPFAR campaign, and this was something that was imported from America, where they would only fund sort of sexual health programming as long as it was abstinence only. And so there was campaigns there in Uganda at least called about grazing the grass and all of this sort. So don't have multiple partners and stuff like this. But really, I think that actually like sort of reversed the progress that they did initially have with getting rid of HIV. Do you think that's sort of somehow infected is not the right word, but has that come through to here?
Not so much. I mean, PEPFAR was unique to the African continent, and it's a mixed thing, because on one hand it enabled treatment to get to parts of Africa where it was not getting treatment, where treatment was not available before. That's a good thing. Okay. The conditions in some of those contracts were around you must promote abstinence as an alternative and condom use. So again, it's mixed blessings. One hand gives, the other hand takes away. But migration did have an impact. But that migration, as we saw, because of the migration policies in this country to stamp down immigration of particularly people of colour, of course that's going to have an impact. So we have seen a decrease in the number of new infections in Black African communities. But Black African women make up nearly 30% of all new infections in women. Okay, so they're like nearly double those of white women. And in Black African men, there's a huge issue around late diagnosis. And that's why we need to continue to talk about it. And also, we're not testing as frequently, we're not testing as often. It's about having conversations about sex in our community.
I did a Edinburgh show in 2009. The big part of the Edinburgh show was me going to get an HIV test, realising that I was sleeping with a man whore. And so he did the whole, like, you know, the end of the show was like Mika's on they use on X Factor, and it was like me getting my results and all of that. And it was just part of the problem I had when I went to go and get the HIV test. I went with a white mate who was treated like, she was giving biscuits and stuff. And it was like almost like I came there and they were going to confirm, as far as they were concerned, it's like, oh yeah, it's just a formality, she probably has it. And that poor innocent one over there, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know if...
Where did you, at a hospital or a clinic? Or
At a clinic in London.
Yeah.
A clinic in London.
Yeah.
I was treated like absolute dirt.
And I think this is the other factor that plays into this, you know, because on one hand you've got the community, so people of colour going, this stigmatises us, this isn't us, and you know, why are you putting this on us? And then when we do go to clinics, we're seen as these hypersexualised beings. There's all these things that happen. Black women that go to the clinic aren't treated fairly. If they go to a GP clinic, and most women won't go to sexual health clinics, they'll go into a GP clinic, and then they might be missed out. So there's that whole stigmatisation around who we are as people of colour, and particularly women of colour, that stuff that's put on us, and so it might make us even more reluctant to engage in a conversation, even get tested.
When you talk about...
And I was just going to ask if you think religion plays a part at all as well, because that was a lot to do with the PEPFAR thing as well. It's the wife of the president in Uganda is Christian, so she embraced that sort of abstinence thing very much so, and I wonder if that plays here as well at all.
I mean, I think religion plays a part in so far as religion plays a part in all of our lives, to sometimes to our detriment, you know, and put so much barriers in front of us. A lot of the work that's been done around HIV prevention in the UK has focused on faith communities. But when it comes to Black African communities, we've put a lot of investment into either working with churches, working with faith leaders to have the conversation. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the best place for us to go. I think 15 years ago, absolutely. But if we're looking about a younger generation of people, if I'm going to church and my auntie's going to church and my uncle's going to church, we're all going to the same place, the last person I want to have a conversation with is my pastor when auntie's there, right? So again, we need to shift as health promotion specialists where we do our campaigning, and this is why we do campaigns like we've done, which have young, vibrant, exciting, sexy-looking black folk on the back of buses, so Tundi or Ola or Jacqueline can see them and go, that's me.
Yes.
But what's happening
is Snapchat as well, that's where they...
Well, this is it, right? I mean, this is where we need to be. We need to think differently, and I think that what THT were trying to do is to try to put that out in a different way, you know, and we're always going to get blowback on this.
Yeah. Can I ask you something? When we talk about stigma, not just within the community, but one of the things, because when I went for an HIV test, I had a family member have a right go at me, going, how dare you go and do a show about that, you're embarrassing everybody, and blah, blah, blah. But the stigma she was upset about was, she was like, you know you're never going to get health insurance, you know that you're not allowed to travel to certain places. How much has the law caught up? I mean, can you be refused life insurance?
No, not
HIV positive
not. I mean,
anymore?
things have changed drastically.
I think that puts a lot of people off.
I mean, that was reality for many people, including gay men, not getting tested for a really long time.
Yeah.
But I can categorically say it is better to know than not know. You can get various types of insurance.
Right.
There are lots of countries that you can travel to. I mean, Obama lifted the travel ban a few years ago to the US. And I always say to people, you know, if there are countries that don't want you because of your HIV, do you really want to go there? Because they're probably going to stigmatise you as a woman, as a gay person, as a person of colour. So I don't want to go to the UAE, right? Because as a gay man, it's going to be quite dangerous for me, regardless of my HIV status. But I think those factors do play a part in preventing people coming forward for a test, because they think, actually, if I know all of these bad things are going to happen to me, well, actually, the worst thing that's going to happen to you, if you don't know, is you can get ill and you could probably die.
Because that scared me for years. I thought I'd rather not know.
Yeah.
It's just easier not to know and just getting on with it. But like you said, it doesn't make any sense in the long term. Especially you've got children and stuff that you want to stay alive for.
Absolutely.
How have you had a response from women? Because one of the videos that I watched in your campaign was a black couple, and they were just talking, and the guy was going to reveal he was HIV positive, and they even went to a black doctor, and I thought that was great. And then I'm seeing all these complaints online, going, why are they using all these blacks? Because actually I can relate to it. I was like, yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean,
the black doctor's got a rap on their head. I like this.
Right, totally, right. I mean, we've come a long way, and I think in terms of representation around sexual health, and we need to, because I'm about facts, and the facts are that we have higher rates of HIV, you know, disproportionately. I think that's what we need to capture, right? We have poor rates of STIs in our community. And we can stick our head in the sand as much as we want to, but it's still there. I remember the Voice article 30 years ago around, you know, gonorrhea rates, and we are in a still situation now.
Yeah.
And I think that what happens in our community is we don't like to, quote unquote, air our dirty linen in public.
Yeah.
And we see the ramifications of that, you know. I mean, this will go out live pretty soon. We was having the R. Kelly story.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to talk about these things, and that's when they become a problem. And I think it's the same thing with our sexual health. We don't want to say. But I also get why. Because then we might be tarnished with being disease carriers.
Yeah.
This is a result of you being hypersexual. If only these people behave themselves, they're vectors of disease. I understand that.
If one person does it, everybody
yeah.
else hard.
So we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
But as a health promoter and somebody that wants good sexual health for my community, I'm quite happy to have that battle.
Yeah.
And also to make sure that our voices are heard. But then finally, I think it's really important, if you look at the campaigns that we have put out, they're not demonising us. They are beautiful images. They're not stereotypical. They use loving, embracing couples in a way that is truly representative of who we are and who we should be. So I think that's a trade-off, and it works well.
Are you kidding me?
What?
Thomas. That is not getting any better. How many days is this?
Who's counting?
Go to the doctors. You only get so many sick days, Thomas.
And waste their time as well as my own.
If you get the sack, you won't be able to afford the sports channel, never mind watch it.
It's been 2 weeks.
Last month, we couldn't celebrate our 2-year anniversary because of the flu.
I apologise for
And the month before that, it was something else. Is there something going on at work?
When you're ill, you're ill.
I mean it, Thomas. You need to get that sorted.
I know. I know.
We start with Arsene Wenger, who says the support of Arsenal owner Stan Kroenke has given him a huge confidence boost. Wenger will celebrate 17 years as manager.
Thomas, can you bring that bag in for me, please? If your hand will allow it, of course.
Very funny.
Don't worry, I'll get it myself.
Mary, I'm coming. Whew. I'm coming.
Are you okay?
I'll go to the doctor's tomorrow.
Good.
I think I've changed so much on this, like in the last 20 years, 25 years, whatever. I'm actually a boy, but I think I'd rather be with a bisexual man than a straight man. No, because they take better care. Like everyone assumes, do you know what I mean? I'd rather be with a bisexual man who understands the risk. Do you understand who will go and get himself tested? These straight men are not getting tested. They're just not. And they have like 4 or 5 women. They think because it's women they're poking into unprotected, it's fine. And then there's this big stigma of this guy sleeping with a guy. They're probably cleaner. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. I do. I really do. And there was something else I wanted to ask you as well. I mean, how part of breaking down the stigma is, would you be, you know, I've seen this conversation. It's not a question I would ask anyone anyway. There's a black woman. She's HIV positive black woman. A cis-het black woman caught it from a guy who was sleeping around on her and stuff. And sometimes, every now and again, she'll ask the question, would you be with someone HIV positive? And then she's HIV, and she gets all these answers back. I mean, that's not a question I would even ask anybody anymore. I would never say that. But I know for me personally, I've definitely changed on that. I wouldn't have an issue with it at all. And I think you need to explain undetectable to people a little bit more, because
what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is, in answer to that question, I would rephrase that question, and I would say to somebody, is it safer to, in regards to HIV transmission, is it safer to have sex with a HIV positive person with an undetectable viral load or somebody that said their last test was 6 months to a year ago, the sex is safer with the person with an undetectable viral load.
Yeah.
So what undetectability means, it means that if a person who is diagnosed with HIV, so they've had a HIV test, that test has come back positive, and that person takes antiretroviral treatment, the HIV medication, it gets the virus to such a low level in their body that the blood test cannot find it. Now, what that means is that they can't pass that on. And I'm not just saying this because I think it's a fun fact. There have been numerous surveys, numerous studies that have been done in heterosexual and homosexual couples, in couples in the UK, across Africa, across Europe, and across the United States. And every one of those tests have come back and there have been no HIV transmissions. The only time there has been a HIV transmission, or the only times, has been one when somebody had HIV already when they went into the test, into the sample, right? So there was a miscalculation, or they cheated on their partner.
Right.
Okay? And even when they've done the research with people in what we call different couples, where one is positive and one is negative, even if there's an STI present, we used to think that STI was a risk factor for elevating HIV transmission, but even with an STI present, transmission didn't take place. So there was one study, the biggest study that was done last year, I think there were 57,000 acts of sex, and not one transmission. And the clinical researcher, who's amazing, has said you need to have sex, I think it's about for 400 years to get HIV. No, I'm kind of thinking about practicing that. I mean, anybody that's willing to kind of try it, step up. But you'd have to have a lot of sex, a lot of times with somebody for HIV to be transmitted. But again, undetectability means that you cannot pass HIV on. Fact.
I will say this as well, because it's an attitude that I've seen, and so I've had some friends who are diagnosed with HIV, about 4 in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I was just reading up on it and stuff, and it's an attitude that I've seen with people. People think, well, I don't care if I get it, if I don't get it. And then they think once they're HIV, that's it, you're HIV. But you can get reinfected, can't you?
No. You can't get.
That's not true.
You can't get. I mean, once you've got HIV, you've got HIV, right?
So if you slept with somebody with a different viral load from you, they couldn't make you worse.
Well, there are different strains of HIV. There's HIV-1, there's HIV-2, and there's HIV. I mean, I'm not going to get absolutely right here.
Yeah.
But there's one which is really prevalent in the UK, which is like your standard one, and one which is in Africa. What you may get is a drug-resistant strain of HIV. So we can all get resistant to any drug that we take. And the HIV virus is a tricky little one, and it mutates and does all these wonderful magical things in your body. So if I have become resistant to a particular drug, which means that I can't take that medication, and I have sex with somebody and I pass on that virus, so that drug-resistant strain, it means that their treatment options might be cut down.
Right.
That's it. But you can't get super infected. There isn't a bigger, bolder HIV that does more stuff to you. Okay? But I think it's really worth bearing in mind that one can still get other STIs. Now, STIs can be cured. Okay, although we see some stories recently about drug-resistant gonorrhea, but that's a whole different kind of podcast. But ultimately, regarding HIV, if somebody's tested and on treatment, they won't pass HIV on.
Okay. And do people use the term AIDS now, or is that just something that doesn't happen?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I mean, in the UK and in the Western world, we don't refer to AIDS. We'll talk about a collection of HIV-related illnesses or illnesses that affect your immune system. However, globally, one must still think about HIV and AIDS because there are still people around the world who do not have access to treatment and will go on to develop full-blown complications as a result of their HIV. We're seeing an emerging epidemic in Russia. There are still parts of Africa where people don't have full access to treatment. In the United States, black gay men are disproportionately affected by HIV, and we're seeing some of those don't have access to treatment. So again...
And is that because they have to pay for it then?
Insurance plays a big part of it. Access to treatment plays a big part,
And can I ask, what is sex education and HIV education looking like in schools these days, if there is any?
I mean, pretty poor. I mean, our sex and relationships education in this country isn't as good as it should be. It still focuses very much on the biology of, the birds and the bees. So there still needs to be a lot more work done to make sure that it is not just HIV.
You get the birds and the bees
Well,
when I was in school. This is quite a while ago.
Yeah, I used to bunk it. But I mean, we need to not just talk around HIV and STIs. I think that's relatively easy to do, to talk about stigma, but it's around enabling young people to have good, healthy conversations and relationship building. So just going back to your point around kind of dating a man who's by it, who might look after himself, I actually kind of challenge that a little bit, because I think it's more around empowering and enabling people to have mature adult conversations. I have 23-year-old nieces who are out in the world. Now I can tell them, use condoms, use condoms, use condoms. What I prefer to tell them is learn how to say no. Learn how to demand that he's gone for a test. Make sure that you get screened regularly. Don't be ashamed of these things. And I think that is much more important and much more powerful than cutting off. Because once you start doing that, you cut out the foolishness anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
True. I didn't mean like, I just kind of meant like, people have this image of gay or bi men being dirty or dirtier and taking more risks, and that's not my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm saying the straight guys I know are actually quite gross.
Yeah.
Hi guys. I don't know if you've got any more questions, Sam, but one thing I would like you to speak about a little bit, because a lot of people don't know about it, and all we know about is Katie Hopkins screaming, gays want chemsex, about PrEP. How important is PrEP? PrEP's something I've taken before.
You have?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I took PrEP. Because I knew about it from you.
Yeah.
And I called Pez.
Fantastic, yeah. So PrEP is a drug which can be taken before sex, which prevents HIV transmission. It's not currently available in this country, free. It's available for a trial, called the Impact Trial, and you can buy it online. It's hugely effective and it works.
I got it in hospital.
But, did you?
I went to hospital and I said...
Okay, was that PEP or PrEP? Was it after?
Oh, after. Is that PEP?
That's PEP.
Okay,
so,
see now we're going to hear the difference. I think there is a difference.
PEP is post-exposure prophylaxis.
Right, yeah.
So you take it after you've had sex. So like the morning after pill. And it prevents HIV transmission after you think you might be exposed. And you take it within 72 hours and up for 28 days. PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, one takes beforehand, and that prevents HIV. So that's not currently available. We're doing lots of work and lobbying to get it available here in the UK. It works for both men and it works for women. And it's really important that we get that message over. Lots of gay men have started to take up PrEP in this country. Women not so much. And we really believe that it can be a huge tool for women because it gives women control. So if you think that a woman's in it, so there was a survey that came out just the other day, it was reported on that 1 in 3 women have said that men have, I think 1 in 3 women have said that men say condoms are too small. You're lying. The men are lying, not the women. But this gives women control. So if you imagine you're in a domestically abusive relationship or a relationship where you cannot negotiate condom use with the man at all, and therefore you choose to take PrEP, or as a female activist friend of mine said to me, actually, I'm not in a domestically abusive relationship. I just like sex and I don't like condoms. That's why I will PrEP. So not about demonising women either. Women must have healthy sex and choices. So it's not always about women in abusive relationships. It's about women who actually say, I like lots of sex, I don't like condoms, and this gives me control of that. In the same way that women take a contraceptive pill not to get pregnant, they can prevent HIV with this.
And how do you think the media have sort of embraced the sort of HIV campaign, or just generally, are they helping, or are they not helping the?
I mean, the media is doing what it usually does, which is kind of generating stories that support its interest. It's been mixed. The Daily Mail, when we started to fight for PrEP, came out some real homophobia that we hadn't seen since the mid-80s, which didn't help. But at the same time, there's been some helpful stuff from the media around the U equals U, the undetectability message. So it's a mixed bag. Some of the gay media's been great. I do wish the Black, African, Caribbean media got much more on board. I've seen some great stuff from some of our sisters who do things like Galgam and Blackbird. They've been on board and they've engaged with it. So, it's been a mixed bag.
Excellent. That's Marc Thompson. Thank you very much for joining us. And we hope that you guys out there watching or listening, however you're accessing us, have learned something today.
Yeah.
For this week's Get in the Bin, I'm going to choose James Goddard. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. You might know him by face, not by name. He's actually one of the Yellow Vest protesters who was filmed harassing Anna Soubry outside Parliament. He's pro-Brexit. He's part of the Leave campaign, and he's a low-rate Tommy Robinson. And I'm choosing him, not that I think he needs more attention, but I think that we do need to highlight there are a whole load of people who are monetizing racism and fascism, basically. And I think we should call these people out and call them what they are, and stop allowing these people to become stars and get, radio shows and TV columns out of this. This guy needs to be stopped in his tracks. He's very dangerous. He's very nasty. And he's pretty disgusting. So James Goddard, what I want you to do is I want you to go out on bin day, go out to the pavement, lift the lid off the bin, get in, put the lid back on, and stay there. Thank you.
My Get in the Bin is Nigel Biggar, who is Regius Professor of Moral and Pastoral Theology and Director of the MacDonald Centre for Theology, Ethics and Public Life at University of Oxford. Now, he came on my radar because of two things. He apparently is leading a course at Oxford Uni called Ethics and Empire, basically a project that looks at how good colonialism was for Africa and India and so on. We got trains. And then also because he went and did a conference around this area, which he went to the Telegraph to tell them that he had to do it in private because he didn't want, these snowflake activists protesting. And you wonder, why would they protest a conference at a university? Well, again, he was going to be talking about colonialism and its benefits. And also, you lead on from the colonialism benefits onto eugenics, I guess. So Professor Biggar is my Get in the Bin. I mean, I'll read some of his own words. Now, we sent some tweets to him just saying maybe you want to look at some of the effects of colonialism in Kenya, and we particularly looked at, in Kenya, the British invented a new kind of pliers, which is used to crush men's testicles. The Kikuyu men were tortured and routinely killed. Sent him that tweet, and he said in reply, sorry, but it's not relevant to the project, which is interesting, I guess. And he went on to say, other things such as genocide is an act that intends to annihilate a people. The Holocaust is the paradigm. English colonialism, however, in North America was not a single act, but many acts of different kinds over centuries, very few of them intended to annihilate a people. Well, I would say intention does not mitigate effect, Mr. Nigel Biggar. I hope you get in the bin and stay there.
My nomination for this episode here in Fabulous is Priyamvada Gopal, and this is because she wrote an amazing article in The Guardian, which was based on a very good Twitter thread of hers, where she spoke about the people who were previously anti-empire or have made their money from being anti-colonialist or anti-imperialists, and then they go and still accept an OBE. And and they seem to go into The Guardian and write their excuses as to why they did so. And she wrote a very good article basically calling them out on their bullshit. And she's very good around issues when it comes to race, particularly in academia. And yes, she's my nomination. So please, we'll put a link to the article. Please read it.
My Here and Fabulous this week is the law firm Simz, Merhood and Burton. I'll tell you why. Because they're my lawyers, actually. And they have been great over the last 2 months, where they've dealt with a case that I've had to get lawyers in for, and variously I had 4 at one point, and they covered employment, dispute, and sort of company law. And I mean, they themselves are known for working generally with social enterprises, charities, and within civil liberties. They say on their website, we have a long history of advising those who might otherwise not have access to legal representation and advice. We have long campaigns in the area of civil liberties and brought our legal expertise to bear on some of the most difficult and contentious of cases. That's it from this week's NDA podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, Facebook. See you next time.
I said it with my chest and I don't care who I offend.